Hello and welcome to a beautiful week. Now, over the weekend, ECOWAS failed to sign the EPA due to some technical issues raised by some member countries, particularly Nigeria. Now, what really are these issues and their implications? The EPA is the framework being proposed by the European Union to develop countries like Ghana to address issues relating to unfair preferential trade agreements. However, far from redressing the challenges, civil society groups say that the agreement worsens the plight of countries which sign onto it and extinguishes any control that the country may have over its productivity capacity. Despite much public agitation against the EPA between West Africa and the European Union, ECOWAS says it's satisfied with it. Does this mean fair and not just free trade? What is it that they know that we don't know? Now, my guest tonight is Neelante Vanderpoel, Minister of Trade, Deputy Minister for Trade and Industry, and also MP for Odododio and Deputy General Secretary of Agricultural Workers Union, GAU, of TUC, and he is Edward Kariwa. Welcome, gentlemen. Joining us on the phone later will be Paul Frimpong, who is a chartered economist of African Affairs analyst. My name is Nana Sakwao, and this is PM Express. Free or fair trade is the issue today, and hope by the time the hour is over, we'd have had an in-depth understanding of what exactly is going on. EPA Economic Partnership Agreement, and with me in the studio are people who can speak to this issue. And welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
But before we start, and I'll start with you, Nida, I think we need to congratulate the President for becoming the President of the ECOWAS. And then look at issues on ECOWAS, just briefly, and see what is it that he can bring to bear to help. I mean, you know, the issues were there before, you know, he joined. But what is it that he can bring on board to at least, you know, help ECOWAS a bit? We have a myriad of problems, barrier problems, intertrading problems, currency problems. The French are grouping together. We are alone in it. You know, what can he bring to bear to at least help ECOWAS?
Well, thank you very much, Nana, and let me say good evening to your cherished viewers. I want to join you, and I believe every Ghanaian, in congratulating our president for this enviable position. It's a very difficult task he's been entrusted with, and I believe it is all of us, our duty and responsibility to pray for him and to support him to succeed, because his success and his performance will enhance the image and the profile of Ghana as far as West Africa sub-region is concerned. The issue of African unity has been on the drawing board for a long time. In fact, it was the dream and aspirations of our forefathers, Osagyefo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, Sekou Touré, and all these people. If you will recall, it was becoming almost impossible for us to have a united Africa. Nkrumah faced a lot of frustrations over some sort of people's personal sentiments against what they perceived to be his personal ambition. So he tried various methods. Even for the sub-regional community, he did. When Nkrumah saw that there was going to be some difficulty in relation to the grouping of Francophone and Anglophone, he tried what we call Guinea, Ghana, Mali, where Ghana, even though an Anglophone country, had a sort of union with Mali and Guinea, Francophone countries. That was Nkrumah's vision, the sort of light, the sort of enlightenment he was bringing to bear on his peers at that time to understand that if we're going to look at our language barriers, we're going to look at where we have come from in the past, we will not be able to achieve the unity and the common communion that we are looking for. So no matter the challenges, no matter the difficulties, no matter the impediments and the hurdles, we must make an effort. And Nkrumah did. And that relationship really yielded a lot of dividends. So that is a sort of a table that ECOWAS came on. So up to today, I think ECOWAS has achieved some successes. This is not the first time a Ghanaian head of state and president is holding this position. But significantly, what we should be looking at is that why is it that always when West Africa really have challenges, that's the time that Ghanaian head of state or Ghanaian president is called upon to chair ECOWAS. We saw it during the time of President Rawlings, we saw it during the time of President Kufuor, and we've seen it again this time. West Africa today is bedeviled with a lot of problems, and I think it's a challenge. It's a really big challenge on the shoulders of President Mahama to be able to stay it. As you said in your preamble, ECOWAS has problems. One, our integration has been too long and festering. Two, the sort of infrastructure that we need in order to make the integration more feasible is totally absent. Three, the sort of union structures that we're supposed to put in place in order to facilitate the integration, apart from possibly the ECOWAS Commission, the political union, the economic union, and the other social structures have not been put in place. Like you said, one of the issues I persistently talk about when I almost always get a privilege to attend the West African Ministers of Trade and Industry meeting is the issue of barriers. For how long can it make it almost impossible for any one of us to travel along our borders to maybe Nigeria? It is more difficult for us to move from Accra to Lagos than it is for a camel to go to the Eye of a Needle.
Let me bring Edward in here. Edward, a brief, on this ECOWAS issue, because somehow, once we start discussing this EPA, it will all probably come back to these things. And, you have the French who are being protected, the French-speaking countries who are being protected by the French. Are they going to leave their safety net to come into this wilderness to say, look, let me take my chances here? They probably won't. So they're going to be half-hearted in ECOWAS and not here. Well, because we live in this side of the world, we are ECOWAS. But their heart and their finances, they are tied to the, purse string of France. How does the president solve an issue like that?
Well, thanks very much to your viewers. And let me take this opportunity, probably on behalf of the civil society and on my own behalf, to thank the president for two reasons. One, he gave us audience last week when it was critical. He was too busy. He gave us an audience to speak to him over these issues, for us to express ourselves why we think that African countries, particularly ECOWAS, should not sign to the EPA. And then again, just to be honored by giving this position, we think that it could be a blessing it could be a blessing, but it could also be what, not necessarily a curse, but a difficult thing for
a headache.
A headache. In the sense that when the sub-region is faced with problems like this, just as Honorable had indicated, is when they put our presidents there. Now, if he had previously holding a strong view, now that you are the head, do you still hold that view? Because you have the responsibility of getting the sub-region to be together. But if you are not the chair, you could stand alone and then it is someone's headache. So we need to help our president at this time, those in government and those in civil society, to help him to manage this difficult situation and come out successfully. So we want to thank him and then also assure him that we are behind him. And therefore, as we believe that the audience that he gave us has actually led to the West African heads postponing this signing of the agreement. That is what we demanded, and it has come to pass. But the next stage will now be to deal with it before the next 2 months.
You wanted to comment quickly on how he's going to solve it, or should we quickly move on to the...
We should move on to...
Let's move on to EPA because our time is quite short,
Yeah.
actually. Now, first of all, this interim agreement is what I want us to just look at it about. I mean, maybe I'll start with Inate. Is an interim agreement on this agreement, is it to make it more better to suit us or more better to suit them? Why an interim agreement?
You know, initially, the European Union had wanted us to sign the agreement itself. In fact, Cote d'Ivoire just went ahead and signed it. But we decided to have an interim agreement. The interim agreement was an arrangement in order to protect Ghanaian industrialists and also Ghanaian, let me say, exporters already to the European community and the European markets. Let me make this point clear. Left to me alone, Leland, sitting here, the first thing we should be looking at as a people is sub-regional integration. You're talking about sub-regional integration with a market population of about 300 million. This is a huge market. So that if West Africans, we could easily break and remove our barriers, accept the fact that trading among ourselves is the best key. The last Economic Commission of Africa economic report shows that as at now, Africa as a whole region controls just about 6% of world trade. But if we trade among ourselves, we could possibly be controlling between 12 and 15% of world trade. That is a huge leap, almost about 100%. So the key is regional integration, trading among ourselves within the region and within the sub-region. The sub-region alone is about 300 million population. So what will it look like if Nigeria should buy all its salt from Ghana? And for example, Ghana should buy all its meat from Niger. Nigeria should buy all its chocolate from Ghana. You understand? Mm-hmm. Among ourselves, we offer to ourselves a better environment, a much more competitive environment to trade among ourselves and give us a good measure. To some extent, the economic integration, if we should use the same monetary unit, it will facilitate this arrangement. Because if I'm buying from you and we always using the same currency, it is not difficult for you to know the terms of arrangement we will have, the common tariff system. Because trading integration will lead to common tariff system. Mm-hmm. So that if I'm selling this thing in Ghana, what I will pay as tariff will be the same thing somebody else in Nigeria will pay. So price levels will be determined. Mm-hmm. Economies of scale will come in this situation. Cost of production, everything will be leveraged. So nobody will produce at a higher cost than another. Even that, if that will happen, it will be so minimal. But removal of taxes and barriers will make it so easy that goods and services will flow and the prices of the goods and services will come down among ourselves. Mm-hmm. So the sub-regional market offers us a better opportunity than even any other market. But the difficulty we have is like what you said. Some of us are already tied to some strings, to some relationships, to some bilateral arrangements. And by international law and practice, if you sign a treaty, if you sign an arrangement, you must respect the terms of the arrangement. So when this issue came up, we look at the effort of some of our small and medium-scale enterprises, some of our young industrialists, especially our people in the pineapple industry, the yam industry, and the rest, who find the European market more conducive. So there was an interim arrangement in order to facilitate their investment, getting the sort of results we're looking at, so that we look at the next agreement. A lot of issues came up. Civil society raised a lot of issues. Our local industries raised a lot of issues. The AGI came up. Chamber of Commerce came up. And so, as a government, we put all this on board. Nigeria also did the same. Other countries did the same. So, at the heads of state meeting in Abuja last year, we brought all these things to bear. So, a negotiating team was put in place, led by the Senegalese president. So, they started negotiating with the European negotiators. So, at the last technical meeting, it was decided that we should put all our aid. And then ECOWAS decided no one single country within the bloc should negotiate on its own or refuse to negotiate. If we are negotiating, then West Africa, ECOWAS as a body is negotiating so that we have equal terms for everybody. So that the European market will not treat one country differently from the other. So that was the arrangement. So it was accepted that the whole ECOWAS as a body should negotiate. So they went into the negotiations. I was in the last ministers' meeting in Senegal, Dakar. And let me say it point clear. At that meeting, there was difficulty in what I would call a united front. Whilst the Francophone West African countries were all set, to some of them, the paper should just be dropped for them to sign. Anglophone countries, Ghana, Nigeria, Liberia, Cape Verde, and Gambia, Sierra Leone, for example, had a lot of problems. Let's take, for example, the point made by Cape Verde, that their major source of foreign exchange earner is in fish. If we sign this partnership, and it happens that the European Union dumps at least 600,000 tons of fish on the West African sub-market, they are finished as a country. So some of these considerations were put in. But then that was covered under the 25% exclusion for agricultural products. And then we also argued on the time frame. So the negotiators were able to agree on a 5-year staggering of the implementation of the whole agreement. So for example, the first 5 years, 25%. The next 5 years, another 25%, and that's the way it should go.
5 years is too short though.
Apart from that, the other side of the agreement was that collectively, European Union was going to make available to West Africa 6.5 billion euros, basically for infrastructure development. So, to some extent, let me say...
Let me take a break here and then we'll come back to that, because that's one thing which really baffles me and maybe anybody looking into that. If I was going to do an agreement with you, why am I giving you money for development? What am I getting so that I have to give you money? It's a business, it's a mutual benefit. So why am I giving you extra money? But stay tuned. When we come back, I'll get Edward to comment on that, and hopefully by the end we will have some education. A very interesting subject, full of technicalities as to whether ECOWAS or as to Ghana has to sign this contract that says that goods from the European Union will come to your country duty-free, and goods from your country will also go to their country duty-free. To sign or not to sign. Now I'll let Edward respond to what the minister says, the difficulties and the way forward. Now, Edward, I know you are not in agreement. We shouldn't sign this thing. And one would say, well, why not? Because at least you also have the opportunity to send your goods to their country, and it gives you that opportunity. So what's the difficulty there? And I want you to add the ECOWAS factor into it.
Well, if you take the interim EPA, it was basically on goods. That is quantitative part of the agreement. This one includes qualitative. Qualitative implication for the sub-region and quantitative implication. When Ghana signed to the interim EPA, we gave up 80% of goods, European goods, into this country, and that we could also send 80% of our goods into their country is not taxable. Now, there's one thing we need to recognize here. In every stage of a country's development, certain characteristics prevail, and based on those characteristics, you have to apply your policies taking into cognizance those characteristics. Today, because we import so much, tariff revenue is a major source of revenue for this country. It is not our making. Even if we don't import for consumption, we will import to boost production. So tariff revenue becomes critical for us. And it is not unique to only West Africa or to Ghana. Since 1790 to the First World War, the United States sources of revenue was from taxes. That is from import tariffs. But beyond that, the country then gained capacity to produce on its own. Incomes within the country had gone up. So they then moved from relying on tariff revenue to income revenue. We have not yet reached there. So it is rational to even see today that if you import so much, and you say much of that your imports should come without tariffs, then you are going to lose huge revenue. That is why we first and foremost disagree even with the 75% market access of European goods to our markets.
I want you to add this to your submission for me and see how we're going to work around it. As per the agreement, all the goods that we can take to Europe free of charge, if I may say, should have inputs from either Ghana or countries who sign on to the EPA. And at the moment, it's only Ivory Coast that signed on to it. So unless we can produce goods with, parts from Ivory Coast, then if it goes there, they have to tax it. Because you can then import goods from let's say America, fix something and send it there duty-free. It's not going to be accepted. And Ivory Coast is not producing much, are they, for us to boost it out? So how do we work around that?
But, yeah, you also see that even the 75% market access, it's not just like we would from time to time decide which goods should be taxed or should be tax-free when it is entering the European market. Those is predetermined. Yeah. Now, the danger here is this. Come the next 2 years, we think that this particular product that we want to send to the European market duty-free, we don't want that particular product. We now want to replace it with another product. You cannot do that again, because you have already locked yourself in. So it is predetermined, so you cannot change it, and that is the danger. Now, that's why I'm saying that we have the quantitative part. Now, the qualitative part is this. It is taking away your sovereign space, policy space, to determine what you should do and what not to do. And that is the danger. If a country must be allowed, this is not even a free trade agreement. It is beyond a free trade agreement. And it is not also about master-servant relationship. It is beyond that. Because a master-servant relationship underscores that you are weaker, the other one is stronger. If you grow big, you can challenge the person. But with this agreement, you never have the opportunity to ever challenge the European Union in terms of trade, because your production capacity is scaled forever. For instance, in this particular agreement which they want us to sign, they have added what we call Singapore issues. Government procurement, investment, services, and then they are even adding what? Capital accounts. Beyond that, they are also adding what we call most favored nation clause. That clause is saying that if you have you sign this agreement with the EU, Ghana or West Africa cannot go out to Brazil and have a more favorable trade term with Brazil. When that happens, they are automatically a beneficiary to that agreement. So it locks us in that you cannot decide for yourself again. Now with the procurement, just recently, the president came out with a very unique vision. A vision that is dear to the hearts of Ghanaians, because he says, look, let's produce and consume locality. Which, if we sign the EPA, that is foreclosed. Why? The president was giving this vision based on the fact that I am going to use the resources, my right, my capacity as the president to decide how to use the budget. And it is budget that will be used to determine where government wants to put their money or does not want to put its money. Now, EU is saying that, look, no, when it comes to procurement, you can no longer limit it. You must open it up to the European companies to also come and bid. So, for instance, you want to print textbooks for our schools, and many schools are now coming up, so on. You want to support local printers. EU says, yes, you can do that, but what you have to do is that open it up for international procurement, bidding. So EU companies will come to bid with our local printers, and we all know that they have superior companies than ours. So virtually everything that we have to do, even for our local businesses, we have to open it up to the EU. That is not what we are talking about. That is not about free trade. So the qualitative implication is that it takes away the development space, tools that you can use to prop various sectors of the economy, so that you can become competitive one day, you can be able to feed your people, you can be able to produce for them to consume and export. That is taken away forever. And that is why we are saying that that should not happen. Now let's look at the West African factor. Well, according to the agreement, we have 15 West African countries, geographically, within the sub-region. Yeah. 3 of them are developing countries: Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria. The EPA will affect Ghana, Nigeria, and Cote d'Ivoire. The rest are least developed countries. And the LDCs can import all their, they can export all their goods to the EU market duty-free, quota-free, except arms. They cannot choose to produce arms here and export to the EU market. Everything but arms. Ghana cannot do that. So whether we even sign this EPA or we don't sign it, they are not locked up in anything at all. They can still have access to the market as they are having it today. So that one,
because of their peculiar position as LDCs,
least developed countries. Yeah. Every country is striving to go beyond what it is. Those countries themselves want to become developing countries. Today we are middle income. And once we are middle income, we intend that one day we will even become a developed country. But the EPA is going to foreclose all that opportunity. No, so again, you see that because these are least developed countries, we have different interests. When imports are cheaper, it is good for them because they don't even produce. Today, Ghana, we don't produce cars here. When imports are cheaper and cars are cheaper, Ghanaians should be happy because we can now buy cars at a lower price. But if we produce cars, we will not like that. And that's why we are complaining, either from officialdom or civil society, everybody, that we don't want cheap imports into our country. Why? Because it undermines our production capacity. But in the LDC countries, they don't produce anything.
So for them, they want it cheap.
So whilst we are looking at supply side implications, they are looking at demand side. And you don't begrudge them because we have different interests. So again, if Ghana and Nigeria alone is having about 160, 150 million people, and we have about 25 million people. So you can see that put together, we will be controlling about 2/3 of the market. EU is not interested in the Francophone countries, their market, because there's no market after all. They are interested in the market of Nigeria and Ghana, and then, by extension, Cote d'Ivoire. So we are in a stronger position to let all these countries come with us. If they don't go with us, we can go alone. That is why Nigeria is saying that we are not going to sign. But the argument is that, no, Ghana, don't join Nigeria because they depend on oil, you don't depend on oil. But look, today, we have joined the League of oil-producing countries, and we are making more and more discoveries. But what EPA would do to us is that, if we sign into it, come the next 5 years, if we even discover oil, even more than Nigeria, we can't opt out again, because we have locked yourself in. That's why we are saying that the EPA, as it stands now, in its current form, is dangerous for us. Therefore, our policymakers, our government should not sign onto it. This is the point. But we are not against a trade relations, a trade agreement with the EU. But we are against a trade relationship that forecloses our future opportunities to develop. And it will be unfair, socially, politically, and religiously, for us who are living today, to lock up people who are yet to be born, their hands, to determine their future. Thank you very much. This is my point.
I totally agree with my brother. In fact, we were at the last council minister meeting together, and I had discussion with their group, the Africa Civil Society group, and the points is articulated very well, all came up. Let me say this. It is not that Nigeria says they won't sign it, and Ghana, we are ready to sign it. At that meeting, we all made a point clear. Like the issues he brought up were issues that we articulated. And so we argued that in view of the way the structure is, it is imperative upon us to have more time to do further consultations with the various stakeholders in our respective countries, in order that everyone will understand the terms and the clauses very well. Because there are a lot of technical issues. All the things that my brother has articulated are issues that not every ordinary Ghanaian will appreciate. So there was a need for us to seek time. So we sought the permission of the House. In fact, that motion was moved by Nigeria, and we supported it. And so we were given the opportunity to go and do further consultations. From the demeanor of some of our brothers, as my brother said, at least they wouldn't lose too much. But critically speaking, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria will be seriously strangulated.
Is it not that fear that we need the West? Why can't we are never able to realize that, no, these guys need us?
But that's the difficulty we have. Because all the issues that we brought up at the last meeting in Abuja, at the negotiating table, were accepted by the European Union. So in this particular context, we were presented with a situation whereby you ask for A, it has been considered. And in negotiations, concessions are made. You ask for B, we have. C, we have. D, we have.
Let me take a break. What's wrong with the status quo? Who's complaining? I mean, 95% of the things we are taking are in raw state anyway.
But we can add value to it ourselves.
But we are not doing it.
But that is what we want to do.
So why are we skipping adding value to go and sign
that is what the president wants us to do. And that's why me sitting here, I've just come from the Brong region.
Paul has joined us. Paul Frimpong is a chartered economist for African Affairs Analyst. Paul, good evening.
Good evening.
Paul, we are looking at EP, and I'm sure you want to add your take to it. And we're just trying to find out probably what the consequences will be if Ghana and Nigeria were to decide and say, you know what, forget it, we're not signing this deal. What then what?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I think what we are seeing now is something we call paradigm shift. So I'm trying to look at how we're able to maintain our development process as it stands now going forward without normally depending on these external forces. So we are trying to shift from depending on external resources to develop, but rather looking at our internal system to develop while using the external source as a leverage. So that's where we are now. Because look across the African continent, in the 1980s, 1990s, the stories that we are seeing now could not have been seen in those periods, because during those times we saw population growing faster than the economic growth. So, and even most countries you saw that economic growth was rather dwindling while population growth was increasing, which at the end of the century has given us a different story. We are looking at most countries in Africa growing at a rate faster than the population growth. Ghana has seen tremendous growth over the period, last 4 or 5 years, in 2011 growing at a double digit, which is very, very impressive. We talk about Cote d'Ivoire, which is a member of the that we are discussing about the FTA, which is expected to grow around 8% in 2014, 2015 going forward, which is very, very tremendous. So now what we are trying to say is that we need to shift the paradigm to the point where we're able to maintain our development depending on our internal structures, internal system, rather than depending solely on the external forces, as if they owe us a living. So that's actually it. And look at the EPA. I think I have some issues in there, because this is not the first time we haven't access to, or we are trying to negotiate a trade agreement with these people. We've done so before, dating back in the 1990s. I think we did the Lomé Convention, then it came to the Cotonou Agreement. And in those agreements, we saw a number of objectives that were supposed to be met. Look at the Lomé Convention, the Cotonou Agreement, trying to help the ACP member countries to be able to develop, increase the trade among themselves, to help them reduce poverty, to help them to develop, economically, to help them to be able to have a say in determining global market price. All those objectives were in there, but we realized that over the period we couldn't meet those objectives, and yet we've come again to this new test of EPA. We're going to liberalize our market to goods and services. And I think as of now, the whole thing has got to do with movement of goods alone, which is what we are looking at, which is supposed to be signed October 2014. And looking at the effect, I think a number of analysts have come out with the whole issues on them around the effect that's going to have on the economy. Like I said, the objectives in the Lomé Convention, the Cotonou Agreement were not met. I don't see how the objectives in the EPA will be met in this time around.
Okay, I'll take a quick break here and I come. I think this is a bit different with the this one. If you don't meet your obligation, they win, isn't it? Because they've opened their market. They say bring goods. So if you don't bring it, they win and you lose. I think that's where the difference is going to be. Like, let me come back after the break. Well, one issue on the table which I think maybe we can discuss in the last minute is that, do we really need the European Union to survive? We have all the food that we need to eat. All buy cars and a few medical equipment. Can't we survive as a people? And where is that confidence to say that, no, forget it. We're going on our own. We will try and make it. Because it's all value addition. And Nilati, you said it so many times, but through no fault of yours. As a state, we've made it a habit to always choose the easy option. Find the gold, dig it, send it out. Grow the tree, chop it, send it out. Anything, we choose the easiest option rather than process it, And how then do we get into the culture of adding the value to build that confidence to know that, oh, forget it, this one we can make it here, so we don't even need it? Because this, if we sign this thing, this would be worse than slave trade. This would be.
And I don't know how you say. Seriously, I would say, yeah, in this world, each one needs the other, but not for survival. We definitely will need the European Union in various aspects of our life. They will also need us, and possibly maybe they will need us more in other aspects, because basically a lot of their industries and the manufacturing companies depend on raw materials.
Sorry to interject, but I'm sure that 95% of the thing they will bring in started from here in the first place.
Materials, and so we depend on each other. So no one group can say the other definitely need me so to survive. It's the same. It's the same with America. It's the same with Asia. It's the same. We need everybody. The whole world. Each one needs the other. And then the agreements, as we say, trade agreements and rest, could be signed. Bilateral agreements and the rest will be signed. Like my brother said, yes, we could have trade, but as a civil society, they've raised the issues about this thing. Yes, we all agree that there are some technical problems with the whole agreement as it's structured, but as it's been decided by the heads of state. Let's come back now. Let's look at all these technical issues.
Let me come in again.
Let's have the
Let me come in again. No matter how this agreement is drafted, we are going to lose. I mean, they haven't come in here to make a loss or make an even kill. They've come in here for profit. And no matter how they reframe it, so far as we've signed, we've lost.
And that is why our heads of state will be careful not to hasten to sign it. Let's now look at the gray areas. If there are things that we can do, if we can tinker with it a little and see whether it will now be more conducive to us, it will help us. Because President Obama made one statement: the YIP-A must inure to the benefit of the development of the people of West Africa.
And it can't.
Well,
the reason why I'm saying it can't is that there's no way the white man will fly all across the Atlantic and say, oh, I'm really going to sign a paper to make Africans rich. They won't do that.
Never. At least we can speak into the mind of our president, because he has said it, that we cannot afford to disappoint our people. That statement is made. I read the graphic, is there clear. Now we are going to hold them on to that. What do you mean by you cannot afford to disappoint your people? Because you may not know that you are disappointing your people. And we in civil society have the responsibility to also draw their attention to some of these challenges. Now, when you talk about the EU fashioned out this EPA because the world is changing, the geopolitics is changing, power relations is changing. China from nowhere had taken EU on in terms of economy. They are now the second largest economy of the world. EU fears China so well. EU hitherto will come and give unnecessary conditionalities that, oh, because of corruption, we cannot give you this aid. What nonsense is that? Excuse me my language.
No,
when you go back to Europe, is there no corruption there? Just recently, what did they say was the corruption figure in Europe? 120 billion euros corruption. Why do they think that there's no corruption anywhere? China has become an alternative. The other countries like Brazil, South Africa, India have become an alternative. And the EU has seen that, look, we need to secure our raw material base.
Just lock these people
advance. Let's lock them in. Because we have an alternative now than ever. If the EU say today they are not even going to give aid or loans to Africa, China will do it. They are losing grounds. So in actual fact, they need us more than we need them. But the unfortunate thing too is that we don't know that we need them or they need us more than we do. If we wake up to that reality, we are just a sleeping giant. If we wake up to that reality, then certainly we'll resist this. And what we are all along trying to, we've been complaining about our economy, particularly in Ghana here, that the structure of our economy remains the same. How do you change the structure of the economy when you don't produce? And if you see the EPAs, once you sign into it, you can never change the structure of the economy. So what they will eventually do is they will incite all of us. Because we say we have a government that is not living up to our demands and so on. Meanwhile, it does not matter who is put there. Because
there's no factory to produce.
There's no factory to produce. It doesn't matter it is A or B. Meanwhile, we'll be fighting among ourselves. Oh, party A, party B, President A. It is not like that. We can never change the structure of our economy. These are the realities. And we think that the EPAs, once we sign into it, we are worse off.
Gentlemen, I want to say thank you very much and ask the producer if I can get you guys back in on Thursday so we can continue this.
If there's one point I will make,
briefly.
I think that everything that should move us as a people should be what the president said, that we cannot continue to depend on imports as a country for survival.
Gentlemen, there's such a list that I wanted to go on, and I wonder if I can get you back in on Thursday in the interest of God and country.
Well, I will be available.
You'll be available?
Yes.
Edward?
I will be available.
We'll continue on Thursday. We want to find out the effect. We want to find out, consequences. And indeed, have we even, committed ourselves, which means that by all means, we need to sign this deal? Or can we look into posterity one day and say, you know what, we left your sovereignty for you. The future is yours. Thanks for watching. And as I said, tomorrow we'll be back to do it all over again. Gentlemen, thank you very much.